Welcome into Sportsmemo's betting podcast for September 10th. It's soccer and golf podcast. We're breaking it down from a Vegas perspective with Nick Borrman. Nick, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Hey, Drew. I'm doing great, man. My Iowa Hawkeyes are off to a 2-0 start. My Chicago Bears, though, they sucked. That was probably one of the worst opening games I remember for the NFL. It was awful to watch, and of course it was my team, so it made it even worse.
Well, one of the good things is we're going to be talking soccer and golf, and you've been good in soccer and golf, making profits for yourself and the clients. It's two sports that you know very well. You are a golf pro, correct?
That is correct, yes.
So got some free time on your hands and can shoot a good score. Always good to have a friend that can win some money on the links and in the betting market. So about the 15-minute mark of the podcast, guys, we will be talking some golf. And it is the golf preview at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. I believe it's the start to the golf season, right, Nick?
It is, yes. First tournament of the 1920 PGA Tour season, as the Tour Championship just ended last year. So, yeah, they quick turnaround, only 3 weeks off, and we're right back to the thick of a new season. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely, man. And that will be about the 15-minute mark. We'll preview that and what Nick's looking to bet this upcoming golf tournament. But first, let's get into soccer. And interesting handicapping situation here. And when you start talking about like intriguing kind of handicaps and, you know, change and what players are going to play and players changing overall in terms of teams, it's something that we're not used to in American sports, Nick. And I'm talking about there was a break, an international break, I believe, and now MLS is going to play. We're going to be breaking down some games for the MLS card, but wanted to throw it over to you in ways you look to handicap kind of this break in soccer that a lot of American sports bettors out there, a lot of our listeners really aren't used to in the sports betting marketplace. So how would you advise kind of going after this?
Yeah, you're hitting it right on the head there, Drew. This is always, anytime you have an international break, which for those that don't know is a 2-week period in the regular league seasons where club football, you know, your England Premier League, your Germany Bundesliga, all those leagues take a break and teams go play for their national teams. So the best players in each of the countries are called up for international duty, and they take a 10-day hiatus from their regular teams, and they go play for Team USA, for example, Team France, Team Russia, whatever. So you have this weird situation where teams, better teams, you know, think like a Liverpool type of a team where they have tons of top talent in the world. A lot of their guys are getting called up to the national team. So now you have the main club team still practicing, still playing. You're trying to get better for this upcoming week, but their main stars, a lot of the guys that usually get all the reps aren't getting the practice with the regular squad. And then same thing for those players. They are on a pretty grueling travel schedule. They're playing international football, so they're traveling between countries. I mean, you have guys that are playing in Europe now going back home to Team USA for 2 games over a 6-day period and then flying back to Europe to play football again by Friday or Saturday. So, I mean, I know, you know, as American sports, we always talk about, you know, traveling from East Coast to West Coast, but throw in the fact now you're traveling, you know, all the way from continent to continent, and it definitely makes for some unique situations. So I'm always very, I don't know, I guess I would say weary is the right word, going into the weekend immediately after an international break, because sometimes you just don't know how tired some of these guys are and how well these teams might gel together right away because of that little break they've had from one another. So some things I do look at when I look at this is I look for the teams that weren't as affected by the international break. Maybe your mid-tier teams, your lower-tier teams that generally don't have a lot of players being called up for international duty. Well, this is a time where they don't have any matches, but they get 10 days to kind of rest, to practice together, versus the better teams. They're not getting the rest because their best players are still out there doing work. So there will be times where you might see an inflated line, you know, like a Manchester City, for example, whose lines are always big. They may be still inflated going into this weekend, but they may be hurting a little bit because of the break. So it's definitely a unique situation. You have to kind of look at the games. You have to know the rosters, have to know which guys are gone and who's playing for these international teams. But it does make for a lot of opportunities that you don't normally see through the regular season. So just an extra layer of fun, we'll call it, as we go into these weekends for sure. That being said, I do have one free play up on the site right now for the England Championship, which is the second tier division there. It's Fulham. Fulham, I have winning their game over West Brom this week. They're two teams not too affected by the international break, so I do like Fulham right now. I'll probably have a few more coming by the weekend, but that's just one I'll throw out there now for the listeners.
Yeah, interesting. Kind of makes for a tricky handicap here, guys. And Nick has been good in the soccer handicapping. So when you say it's always scary because you don't know who's playing, you got to keep in mind the odds makers don't always know that stuff either. And his best bets in soccer, 55%. That's 185 and 153. That's a long-term mark there. Also, soccer totals 205 and 165. I'm talking Nick's records here. In soccer and in Euro qualifiers, he's 31 and 25 so far. That's 55% too. So some really good marks here on the soccer pitch for Nick Borrman. And you can check out all of his plays at sportsmemo.com. You can get his full season soccer, full season golf, or you can take advantage of the coupon code strictly for this podcast, and it's his 30-day all access to both golf and soccer. So it's a 30-day all access package. Coupon code NICK99. That's NICK99 at checkout. We'll give it to you all for just $99. That's $129 off. Normally $229 there, so actually $130 off of the package. Great deal there at sportsmemo.com. 30-day all access with Nick Borrman for just $99 using the coupon code NICK99 at checkout. Let's break down some of these games here, Nick. On the soccer pitch, we got Toronto at New York City. New York City minus a quarter goal. High total here, 3.25.
Yeah, this should be a great game. Both teams are coming in playing extremely well. New York has won 5 straight matches in 8 of their last 10, and has also won 5 in a row at home in 9 of their last 10. And they've only actually lost once all year at home. They play really, really well there. They finally climbed to the top of the Eastern Conference standings with a win over New England last week, and they were trailing Philly for most of the year, but they finally jumped ahead of them. And they still have a game in hand. They've played one less match so far. So I don't see them falling back. I think we're looking at the number 1 seed here in the East. That being said, Toronto's also playing very well at the moment. They're unbeaten in their last 7 games, which includes 2 games in the Canadian Championship, which they actually made the finals against Montreal. They went into Cincy last week, whooped up on them, but Cincy's the worst team in the league, so can't be too excited about that win. But they did win pretty easily, 5-1 there last Wednesday. But this will certainly be a tough test for Toronto to come into New York. Both teams, as we mentioned, the international break, are unaffected by it. Normally, Toronto has a couple players, Michael Bradley, Josie Altidore, that are called up for Team USA, but they are not playing. Both elected to stay with Toronto as they're in the thick of the playoff race, so they chose not to go to the national team for this. So in this match, both teams will be at full strength. New York last week was missing their best goal scorer, Heber, so we're not sure yet if he's supposed to be back. He was injured, but the Jesus Medina, who played in his absence, scored both goals for them and looked really, really good. So even if he doesn't suit up this week, I still think they should be strong enough up front and won't miss a beat with him on the sidelines. So I think this is a situation that sets up well for the home team. Toronto actually beat New York 4-0 at home back in March, but that was beginning of the season. New York was a much different team at that time. They were really trying to figure out their lineups as they lost a lot of weapons from the year prior. So I can't really put a lot on that game. So I like a little revenge here. I like New York to win this one at home, Drew. Right now, as you mentioned, they're favored by a quarter of a goal, but I like them on the 3-way line price. They're plus 120 right now to win. I think there's really good value on New York. They're tough at home, and I think they can win this one on Wednesday night.
All right, Nick, we got Minnesota at Houston up next. Houston, the home team, laying a quarter goal, total of 3 here.
Yeah, honestly surprised to see this line. I figured we'd probably see more of a pick'em line here. Minnesota, I think, catching the quarter of a goal is really worth the play here. Houston, they've been just another disappointing year. They're all but eliminated from the playoffs. They're 12 points back right now with just 6 games to play. So barring some ridiculous miracle, which I just don't see from this team, they are out again for back-to-back years. The West in general is very, very crowded, which makes it another reason Houston's unlikely to get up there. LAFC is number 1. They've locked in the number 1 seed, but seeds 2 through 8 are all separated by just 4 points in the standings, and Minnesota falls right in the pack there at number 3. So very, very important for them to earn points here on the road, as any slip up can have you drop down to the bottom of those standings quickly, and only teams 1 through 7 make the playoffs. So that 8th spot is definitely something they're going to be trying to avoid. Minnesota, as far as international duty, Minnesota is going to be missing midfielder Jan Gregus, who plays for Team Slovakia. He'll be away for this match, but otherwise they'll be at full strength. And on paper, if you look at their schedule coming up, this looks like the easiest game they have the rest of this season. So they are definitely going to be, going all in to try to get this win. And like I mentioned, they need the points bad. Houston just has really struggled. They are not playing, well at all year, and really have struggled even worse lately. Minnesota's actually beat them twice already this year too. 1-0 at home, and they won 3-2 at Houston, knocking them out of the U.S. Open Cup back in June. So it's always tough to beat a team 3 times in a year. But I think they're going to have the confidence that they've already beat them twice, and they should be able to come in here and, at plus a quarter of a goal, we don't have to win this game, but even getting a draw here will at least cash half the bet. So I like Minnesota plus 0.25 here, Drew.
Nice, Nick. And you bring up the fact MLS Playoffs, it's the first 7. So how do they set that up? Because we're used to, 4-team playoff, 8-team playoff. How does a 7-team playoff get set up?
Good question. They actually just changed it this year. It used to be 6. Last year was 6 teams, and it was like the NFL, playoffs.
Yeah, that makes sense. But how does an odd number work?
So now 7 teams, they expanded to 7 teams. What they did was, as we've talked about before with soccer and their playoff systems, like in the Champions League, what you're going to see is the playoffs were home and away matches, right? So each round was 2 games, 1 home, 1 away, and the better team over the 2 games was what moved on. It wasn't single elimination. So the MLS changed that this year to make it single elimination and to make home field matter more. So they upped it to 7 teams. Team seed number 1 gets a bye, and then teams 1 through 6 will all play each other, and then seed 1 will come in the second round and play the 4th team there that makes it in. So it's definitely different this year. It's definitely putting a lot more pressure on these teams to make sure they're in the top 4 spots to at least guarantee themselves 1 home game going into the playoffs, because as we've talked about a million times, MLS is it's very important to have a home field advantage. So it'll be interesting to see how these teams play at the end of the year. Last couple of years we've seen, if teams are safely in the playoffs but unlikely to get that first or second spot, there's really not much to play for those last 2 or 3 games. But now this year, because of this fact that every point could matter to get home field, I think it'll play out a little differently come the end of the year. But that's how they're doing it, to answer your question, Drew.
Yeah, and you bring up the fact how much home field advantage matters. And I'm not, I just listen to you and I'll watch the games sometimes, mostly the international games. But just from doing these podcasts with you, man, for the last year or so, the home field advantage, it's got to matter in MLS more than any other American sport, more than college football Saturday night at LSU, whatever you want to throw out there with home field advantage. It's more in this, because I'm telling you, we almost never talk about an away team favorite, Nick.
You're 100% correct, and you actually, I want to look up a number for you. I want to try to find out before we meet again and talk next week. I want to see what that number is, because you're right. It is very much so. I wonder what it is compared to the NFL, to college football, to NBA, to whatever. I wonder how much different that percentage is for home field favorites versus the other sports, because you're right. It's 1 game a week out of 10 or 12 that we usually see a road favorite, and that's it. So it'd be interesting to see what that number is, because you're right. It just doesn't happen very, very often.
Yeah, man. All right, we got 2 games left. We'll hit them quick and then get to golf. We got LA Galaxy at Colorado. Colorado minus a quarter goal. Total of 3.5. High total here in Colorado. Reminds me of baseball, man.
Yeah, exactly. The mile-high goal scorers here. Quick turnaround for Colorado. They just played Saturday. They earned a nice 2-0 win over Seattle, and that gives them back-to-back 2-0 wins. They beat the Red Bulls the week prior. Unfortunately for them, though, they're probably too far back at this point to have a realistic shot. They're 10 points back of the last playoff spot, so I don't think they're going to have a real good chance at getting in. But who knows? I mean, they get a win here. It will certainly go a long way to keeping their hopes alive. Galaxy, they've really been struggling defensively. The same issue that's kind of plagued them the last few years. The only team they somehow have played well against over the last 2 months, believe it or not, is LAFC, the best team in the league. But outside of 2 games they played against LAFC where they won and drew, so they earned 4 points in those 2 games. They've only earned a total of 4 points in 7 other matches dating back to the 4th of July, so they've really been struggling. On the road, forget it for the Galaxy. They haven't won since beating Cincinnati, the worst team in the league, back in June, and they're winless in their last 6 away from home, with their only point, that LAFC draw I just mentioned. So even though they're struggling defensively, I'm going to suggest the under here, Drew. I think it's a high total, as you just mentioned. If the Galaxy, want any chance at really having to be able to make a run as we get closer to the playoff times, they have to work on that defensive back line, and rumors are that's what they've been spending their time right now trying to do. And they actually played well against Colorado back in May when they first played. They lost 0-1, but they were able to limit Colorado pretty well as far as total shots conceded in that game. And I think they're setting up with a similar game plan here. So I think they're going to make a conceded effort to really clean up the defense here. Colorado is not a high-scoring team, not really involved in a lot of high-scoring games. So I like the under here. I think we're going to see a low-scoring one in Colorado Wednesday night.
All right, Nick, last game up, San Jose at Real Salt Lake, pick 'em price, total of 3.
I like Salt Lake here, Drew. We've talked a couple times about the home field advantage here for Salt Lake and going in there and playing, and I think that's going to be a factor here. I wouldn't be surprised to see this line move to Salt Lake -1/4. So at the pick'em price, the 2-way line is good to take them now. That way, if we end this game in a draw, we're not going to lose our bet. But San Jose, they had a really impressive run through the middle of the season. They had just 2 losses in a 17-game stretch. But they've since slipped. They have 3 straight losses on the road. They did win their last 2 games, but those were both at home against non-playoff teams, Orlando and Vancouver. But I think they're going to struggle here on the road in Salt Lake. Like I said, we've talked about the difficulty of playing there, and Salt Lake always plays very well at home. Aside from 2 losses against, we'll mention them again, LAFC, they have not lost at home in 9 straight games. San Jose has only won twice in 13 all-time trips to Salt Lake is another stat I was looking at as well. Just another situation I don't think it sets up well for the traveling side here. So grab Salt Lake in this one, Drew, and probably better to take them now while they're still at the pick-em price.
All right, he's Nick Borrman, and its 30-day all-access package includes soccer and golf at sportsmemo.com. Only $2.29 on the site. You can go there and do that, or you can use the podcast coupon code and save yourself some money. We got the podcast coupon code NICK, N-I-C-K 99. That's NICK99 at checkout to give you his 30-day all-access package. All the plays, all the sports he does, both golf and soccer, for just $99 using the coupon code NICK99 for his 30-day all-access. Let's talk some golf here. We got the 2019-20 season officially begins with the first event of the year, a military tribute at the Greenbrier, played at the Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia. I've heard good things about that place, Nick. It's a casino of some sort, I believe. Nice golf course. What are you looking to bet?
Yeah, excited about the PGA Tour season getting off here. Like I said, like we mentioned before, quick turnaround, only a couple of weeks off. And really what you're going to see this week and several of the first few weeks is a lot of guys that that aren't the names you know. So there are 50 players that just graduated the Korn Ferry Tour. It just got renamed. It was called the Nationwide Tour or the Web.com Tour before. I don't know if you're familiar with those names, but it's the tour right below the PGA level. And the top 50 players earn their PGA Tour card for this year. So 50 graduates just completed that last weekend. And all 50 are going to be in the field this week, including 21 PGA Tour rookies. So these first couple of weeks are definitely fun. You're going to get a lot of young talent, guys fresh out of college, guys that have been in the grind of mini tour golf for several years that just haven't quite made that level to the PGA Tour. So you'll definitely see some names you're not going to be familiar with, which, you have to kind of dig deep to find some guys that potentially could be good coming forward. But you don't, it's hard to find a lot of information on some of the guys too. So you got to be a little careful as far as who you're looking at and who you're looking to bet. But there's definitely going to be no Brooks Koepka this week or next week. No Rory McIlroy. Those guys will definitely take a couple of these weeks off season a little bit. But to mention this week, the head-to-head matchup lines aren't out yet. They'll probably be released, a little bit later today, but they do have some future lines out. And I got 3 guys on my radar that I like for good finishes, all top 20 finishes. So Victor Hovland, he burst on the scene last summer, fresh out of Oklahoma State. He had 6 starts on the PGA Tour at the end of last year. He, with his best finish, a tie for 4th at the Wyndham. He just graduated the Korn Ferry Tour Finals. He finished tied for 11th and tied for 2nd in his first 2 starts. There's 3 tournaments that make up the finals, and he didn't even need to play the last tournament because he already earned his qualification. So he was a guy. He's got a lot of hype around him, and I think he's in for a good chance at a good finish this week. He's minus 110 right now to finish top 20.
What was his name?
Victor Hovland.
Okay. Victor Hovland. Okay, nice.
Scott Scheffler, another guy. He's plus 200 right now for a top 20 finish. Now, he was the number 1 player on the Korn Ferry Tour all year. He won twice, had 10 top 10 finishes. He earned both the number 1 spot in the regular season and through the playoffs. He led the tour all-around ranking, putting, and par 5 scoring. And then the 3 playoff events, he won the first one, finished tied for 11th, and tied for 7th. So, guy that's playing incredible golf right now. And there's a lot of good statistics that he's been able to pull through all of last year. So he's plus 200 to finish top 20 this week. And then lastly, Sung Jae Im. So he was actually a rookie last year on the PGA Tour. He led the tour with 35 starts. So he's a guy that just knows the grind of the tour and played more than anybody else last year. He made it all the way to the Tour Championship and ended up finishing 17th in the FedEx Cup standings at the end of the year. So very, very impressive year for him. He finished top 35 on the PGA Tour in a ton of major statistical categories, including 17th in total shots gained. So the nice part for him is he is rested. He didn't play. He didn't have to qualify for his tour card. So he's rested for the last 3 weeks, and he's plus 175 for a top 20 finish this week as well. So those 3 guys I like for good finishes this week, all pretty good value in my opinion, and definitely worth a few bucks.
Okay, and can you just recap them with the prices, Nick?
Yep, we got Victor Hovland, minus 110.
Okay.
Scott Scheffler, he's plus 200. And Sung Jae Im, he's plus 175, all top 20 finishes.
Plus 175?
Yep.
Nice, okay. All right, man. Greenbrier starting this weekend, right? So it starts on Thursday?
Yep, it starts Thursday morning.
All right, good stuff, man. I've played the Homestead, which is close to the Greenbrier there. I think they're kind of like rival country clubs, and it was a nice area. Good golf area right around there. Is there anything, to this golf course that you would throw out there to some of the watchers and what to look for in the betting markets?
Well, this is the 9th year that they've had their tournament at the Greenbrier. They actually didn't play here last year. They had their schedule changed because of we mentioned before about the fact they were trying to end their year before football kind of started. So they ended up having the schedule changed, didn't play. Kevin Na is the defending champion, but they haven't played there since 2 years ago. It's really a course that it's old. It's been around for a long time. It's small greens. You're looking for guys that are good at mid-iron play because it's not an overly long course. Most of these guys will be hitting anywhere from 8 to 6 iron into a lot of the greens. So you're looking for guys that are very good off mid-iron plays into small greens. And because of that, putting is always important, but putting tends to be more important on tournaments where you see big greens, where you're hitting greens and you're 30, 40 feet away. So putting, I won't say is not important, but probably not the most important statistic this week. And I would look for greens in regulation. And last year they'll give you on the PGA Tour.com website, you can find statistics for almost every distance. So look for anywhere from 125 to 175 yards in guys that are looking for greens in regulation, high percentages there.
All right, Nick. And yeah, you bring up the fact that it's old. I believe the Homestead and the Greenbrier, they were around like before the United States of America became the United States of America, like before the Revolutionary War and stuff like that. Have you ever looked into that?
I haven't, no, but that would be, that's an area that certainly was developed before the United States was established. I don't know. Obviously, the resort, wasn't the resort back then, but the area, I'm sure, was there. I don't know if the course was there quite that long at the time or not, but it'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, no, it's just good stuff. A lot of old records that are kept around that area of the country. But good stuff as always, Nick. Guys, remember the coupon code Nick99 for his 30-day all access. And yeah, guys, we'll be back tomorrow with the college football every game on the board podcast. So best of luck with your bets.